Hey guys, JK Wargames, and today we've got another Black Powder battle report. This is a solo report, so I'll be playing both sides, the British and the French. We have a few new units. We have the 95th Rifles and the French Voltigeurs, and we have some new leaders as well, so I'll go through those. Let's have a look. Okay, so the British Army, we have the British Line Infantry. We have the newly painted 95th Rifles from front rank, and we have an attack column. They are commanded by Commander Yaus. Then we have the cannon. We have our main general, Wellington. And over this side, we have Picton. And Picton is commanding the cannon, British Line Infantry, and the Hanoverians. So Wellington is there to give us a re-roll. So not bad for the British. So let's look at the French. For the French forces, we have the Voltigeurs, light infantry. We have the chasseurs and an attack column of French infantry, and they are commanded by Grouchy. We then have Napoleon, who's our main general. Moving along the line, we have another unit of chasseurs. We have French line infantry and a French attack column. They are commanded by the French commander. And again, Napoleon is there for re-rolls. So it's going to be 7 turns, and we are playing victory points for destroyed units and shaken units. So the British have the first movement, so I'll do it now. Okay, so movement. Picton managed to get the Hanoverians 3 moves, and they managed to just get into the first part of the field. These guys are slightly on the broken building. And then he failed an order. He actually failed the first order with the Hanoverians, but Wellington gave him a re-roll. And then he failed his second order for this line infantry to go as far as they can. And the cannon wasn't receiving an order anyway. So then Yaus managed to command the British infantry and attack column 2 moves. The 95th Rifles managed to move into the field, so they've taken up position, waiting on the pesky French, and the last British line managed to make 1 move. So we will go into shooting, and the only thing in range is going to be the cannon. So the 9-pounder is going to fire across at the French cavalry, the chasseurs. So it's going to be 1 dice, normally hitting on 4s, long range is a 5, so they're going to need a 5. So just 1 dice on a 5. Let's see what happens. So 1 dice hitting on a 5, and they miss on a 2. So we'll go into the French movement. So French movement, the Voltigeurs moved up behind the trees. The cavalry managed to get 2 moves. Then Grouchy moved up himself. He also ordered the attack column. First part of the column got into the field, the other part is just behind. And then the French commander here failed. He managed to get 1 order for this cavalry, but the line and the column failed. He failed his order and he had to get a re-roll for the cavalry. So we will go into French shooting, and I think the only thing in range is going to be the Voltigeurs, but we'll see. So the Voltigeurs are in range of the 95th Rifles in the field. So they've got 2 dice. They're going to be hitting on 4s, but the skirmishers count as not a clear target. So they're hitting on 5s, 2 dice. And we've got 1 hit, so the 95th have been disordered. And now the 95th are going to make 1 save of a 4. And they save it on a 6, but they are disordered. Okay, we'll go into turn 2 for the British. So movement for the British, the 95th were disordered, couldn't receive an order. But on the left flank here, the British line infantry have pushed up. So there's going to be a firefight with the light infantry. This attack column formed into a line and made 1 move towards the cavalry. This line got 1 move, and the Hanoverians pushed up 1 move in the field. So we're going to go into British shooting, and we'll see what happens. So the British line firing, they normally get 3 dice, but this is the first time they've fired because they've got first fire. So they are getting 4 dice. They're normally hitting on 4s, but the light infantry are not a clear target due to being kind of skirmishers, light infantry. So we're hitting on 5s with 4 dice. And we've got 2 hits. So that's going to be 2 saves of 4 for the light infantry. And they've made both. So no effect there. But I think the 95th Rifles are going to have a pop at them. Definitely in range. But they are disordered. So we are going to get 2 dice. And they're hitting on 4s. +1 because they're skirmishers. So that would be 3s, but back to 4 because they're disordered. And they get to re-roll 1 dice because they've got sharpshooter. So hitting on 4s. There's 1 hit, and we get to re-roll this dice because of sharpshooters. And that's still a miss. So we've got 1 hit, so it's going to be a 4+ save. And the first casualty of the game. So the Voltigeurs take 1 casualty. So some good shooting from the 95th. So now moving on to this line infantry. They're going to fire at the cavalry. They're going to be hitting on 4s, and they have 4 dice as well because it's the first time that a British line are firing. So they're going to be hitting on 4s. So let's see what happens. We got 2 hits, and the French cavalry chasseurs save on 3s. They've got quite a good save. And they save 1 and take 1, so they take 1 casualty. So we'll place a casualty marker on them, 1 wound, put it next to them. Okay, moving on to the cannon. So the 9-pounder. They are looking at the cavalry in the field. That is their target. Let's see the range. They're not within 24, so it's not medium. it's still long range. So it's going to be a 5 on 1 dice. So let's see. Hitting on a 5. Oh yes, they've disordered them, and that's a +2 to their save. So they're now saving on a 5 instead of a 3 because it's artillery. And they failed, so they take 1 casualty and they're disordered. So that's a good result. So 1 casualty and a red dice to show that they're disordered. That goes there, and that goes on top. Okay, nothing else is in range, so that's the shooting phase for the British. We'll go into French movement. Okay, so French movement. The Voltigeurs moved up to the hedge with 2 moves. The cavalry charged the British line and they were able to form square. They're not disordered or anything. So the cavalry just stopped before them. The attack column moved up 1 in the field. These guys got 3 moves, but they're not quite in a position to fire at these guys. So they're kind of staring at artillery over there. And then the attack column on the left flank managed to just move into the field. So we're going to go into French shooting. So the Voltigeurs, they're going to get 2 dice. They're going to put 1 into this unit and then 1 into the 95th Rifles. So this unit, they're going to be hitting on 3s. This unit, they're going to be hitting on 4s. So the one at the British line hitting on a 3, they miss. And the one at the 95th on a 4. They hit, so the 95th need a save of a 4. And they fail, so the 95th take a casualty. I'll apply that in a minute. So not too bad. So this French line, they're within 18 of the British line. They're going to get 3 dice hitting on 4s. So here we go. I'll just grab 1 more dice. So 3 dice on 4s. They've disordered them with 1 hit. They will need a save of 4+, and they saved it, but they are disordered. And then this attack column have got 1 dice into the Hanoverians, hitting on a 4. They hit. Hanoverians will save on a 4, and they saved it. So that's the French shooting. They managed to get 1 casualty on the 95th and disorder the British line over the far side. Okay, so movement for the British. This British line managed to turn round to get shots on the Voltigeurs. The 95th Rifles are in the building, so they've got some cover and protection because they only have a stamina of 2. And then the square couldn't move because the cavalry are still within 6. The cannon did attempt to move, but Picton failed and he's too far away from Wellington to get a reroll. This line was disordered, but the Hanoverians managed to turn on the spot and they're looking to fire into this line, but they have pesky French coming through the gap by the house. So we'll go into British shooting. So the British line into the Voltigeurs. normally 4s, but because they're light infantry, not a clear target, it's going to be on 5s. And they miss. Okay. However, the 95th are going to be firing out the building, 2 dice into them, but they do have cover. So it's going to be 4s, 3s because they're skirmishers, back to 4s for the cover. And we get to re-roll 1. So they've missed both, so we can re-roll 1 of these dice. And they've missed completely. Terrible shots from the 95th. So this square is going to get 1 dice at the cavalry on a 3. No, they've missed. Okay. So the British artillery are within medium range of this French line. So they're going to get 2 dice hitting on 4s. Let's see if they can do some damage here. Okay, so hitting on 4s. They've missed completely. This has been a terrible round of shooting. And the Hanoverians over in the plough field are shooting at the French, the same unit there. Hitting on 4s, but there's a wall in the way, so they're going to be 5s for the cover. So hitting on 5s. And they've missed. I don't think one shot connected, but nearly forgetting this British line. First time firing, are going to fire at the same unit. So they're going to get 4 dice. Hitting on 5s, however, because they're disordered. There we go. 3 hits and disordered them. So 3 saves of 4. They failed 2, so they take 2 casualties and they're disordered. So not a great round of shooting for the British. So a bit of action going on in the French movement. The light infantry moved into the field. The chasseurs managed to get 3 moves and have charged the artillery, but we haven't done defensive fire yet, closing fire. The column got 3 moves, so they moved up, and then this chasseur failed. No re-rolls, and the rest of these guys couldn't move. So we're going to go into shooting for the French. So the light infantry voltigeurs are firing all their shots at the 95th Rifles. So it's going to be 4s, 5s for not a clear target in a building, and then 6 for being skirmishers. So let's see what happens. No, nearly. Okay, moving on. The attack column are going to get 1 dice into the disordered line over there. So they are looking at a 4. They hit, and the British need a 4 to save, and they save it on 5. Okay. This disordered French unit are going to fire with 3 dice. Normally 4s, but they're disordered. Will be hitting on 5s. So here we go. Oh wow, disordered them. They're already disordered, and they got 2 hits. So we need 2 saves of 4+ for the British, and they made both of them. Amazing. Lastly, the attack column are firing through at the Hanoverians, and they're within 6, so they're hitting on 3 with 1 dice. They've hit on a 4, so a save of 4. The Hanoverians save. So a bit of a stalemate there. So we'll go and do the closing fire for the artillery. So the artillery have been charged by the cavalry. They're going to get 3 dice hitting on 3s. This could be quite painful, and the chasseurs already have 1 casualty. So let's see the result. So 2 hits and disordered them. So 2 saves of 5. They made 1 and failed 1. So they're on 2 casualties, and they will be disordered for the close combat, which is interesting. So they're on 2 casualties and they're disordered. So we'll go straight in and fight this combat. So the chasseurs are attacking. They get 7 dice, hitting on 3s because they charge, but it goes back to 4 because they're disordered. So here we go. They have 1, 2, 3 hits. So the artillery will make their saves of 3 saves of 4. They've made 1, so they are shaken. The unit has taken 2 casualties. They are shaken, and they will fight back because combat is happening at the same time. They fight back with 4 dice, and they're hitting on 4s. And they get 1 hit, so the chasseurs will make a save, and they do. So the artillery has lost the combat by 2, and we're gonna roll the dice with no minuses, but I'm pretty sure artillery breaks in combat all the time. So the British artillery has been destroyed, so it's 2 victory points to the French. The French cavalry turned on the spot for their move for winning, but remember they are disordered. So yeah, the French take the lead with 2 victory points. So we are now going into turn 4 for the British. Okay, so British movement. This line managed to turn on the spot because they wanted to enfilade into the cavalry. The next roll was a blunder, and the result was that the square would charge the closest unit, and they got 3 moves, had to roll another dice. They got 3 moves, so they've ended up charging the chasseurs. So there's a good chance we could get rid of them because they've got 2 and they're disordered. And because they blundered, nothing else could move. So we're going to go into the British shooting. So the 95th have their rifles out of the window frames and they're firing into the light infantry in the field. So we're hitting on 3s, but they are not a clear target for being light infantry. So we are hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1 miss. So we've got 1 hit, and we can re-roll this. Re-roll it in the box. No. So we got 1 hit. That's a save of 4. And they failed. So that unit is shaken because they're only a small unit. They've got stamina of 2. So they are shaken. So we need to get more shots on them to force them into a test. So let's move round to this British line. And the British line are going to fire into them. They're within 6 inches now. They're getting 3 dice, hitting on 3s, but they're behind a hedge, so it's going to be 4s. So here we go. Nothing. That's terrible. That could have been so much better. Okay, well that wasn't too good. Moving over. Hanoverians are the last unit that can fire. The guys that were enfilading the chasseurs can't fire because they're locked in combat. So the Hanoverians shooting into the French line behind the wall. They get 3 dice and they need 5s. And they've got 2 hits. Great shooting. So 2 saves of 4. They failed both. So I believe they're going to be testing because they're on 2 already. So they go up to 4 casualties and they're disordered. So they have a -3 on their test. So -2 for going over 2 casualties. Oh no, hang on. No, I take that back. They are testing -2. -1 for going over being shaken and -1 for disordered. So -2. 2. They're gone. 6 take away 2 is 4. They've been destroyed. That's 2 points for the British. So it's even at the moment. So maybe the bravest British line infantry ever charging cavalry. They're going to get 6 dice, hitting on 3s because they charged. So here we go. Let's put our dice box here. Hitting on 3s. That's a lot of hits. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits. So let's remember they've got 5 hits. The chasseurs are going to do their saves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they need 3 pluses. And they failed 3 of them. So they are definitely going to be testing. So they've taken 3 casualties. Let's put that there for a minute. They're going to attack back with 7 dice, but they're hitting on 5s because they are disordered. And they get 2 hits. So the British need 2 saves of 4+. They make 1 and take 1. So the British take 1 casualty and the chasseurs take 3. So there's a difference of 2. The British have won the combat by 2. So the chasseurs are going to be testing. So 1 takes much shaking, 4, 5. So they're on 5. So 3, -2, -3. So -3 on this test. Puts that down to a 4. Chasseurs are gone. This is turning into a really brutal battle. So the British take the lead now with 4 points. Okay, movement for the French. This column, formed into line, and they're going to be shooting into the rear of the British infantry, which is not good. Cavalry attempted to charge with 3 moves, but they got 2. But the line infantry here have managed to charge the Hanoverians in the plough field. So we're going to go into French shooting. Okay, so the French light infantry, hold gears, shooting at the 95th again. They really want to dislodge them, get rid of them. So 2 dice, they're hitting on 4s, point blank 3s, goes back to 4 for a not clear target, and then 5 for them being skirmishers. So let's roll the dice, see what we get. Nothing, so they've missed. Okay. The French line shooting into the rear of the British. They're going to get to re-roll all their dice for any misses. So hitting on 4. Is that actually within 6? No, it's not. So they're hitting on 4s. So 2 hits, and they get to re-roll this miss here. So that's 3 hits. So that line need 3 saves of 4. And they made them all. Wow. They are so lucky. Okay, so before we do close combat, let's do the closing fire for the Hanoverians. It's going to be 3 dice, hitting on 3s. So here we go. Wow, 3 hits, and they've disordered them. That's important. So the French will do 3 saves of 4, and they fail 1. So they're disordered and take 1 casualty. So close combat. 6 dice for the French. They're normally hitting on 3s because they charged, but they're disordered, so they're hitting on 4s. And we will put the dice box here, hitting on 4s. Wow, so they got 1, 2, 3, 4 hits. So the British will make their 4 saves now, needing 4s. And they failed 2, so the British take 2 casualties. And when I say British, I mean Hanoverian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they are rolling 6 dice and they're hitting on 4s as well. So let's see. Okay, so they get 2 hits. So the French need to make 2 saves. They made 1 and take 1 casualty. So the French have actually won by 1. And they're on 2 casualties. So we were defeated in hand-to-hand combat, the Hanoverians, but I don't think there's any minuses. No, so it's just a straight up test. They've rolled a 7. I believe the unit holds its ground. Let's have a look. So a 7, a hand-to-hand, the unit holds its ground. So that combat will be fought in the next round. So fast forwarding to the end of the game, it's a British victory. So the Hanoverians defeated the French, that gave them another 2 points. And the 95th destroyed the Voltigeurs. So the British have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the French have 1, 2, 2. So an absolute massive victory for the British. Finally, they managed to beat the French. So I hope you enjoyed this battle report. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.